Welcome back. All right, so the R in grind is for research. One of my favorite quotes is, research is what I do when I don't know what I'm doing. Research is what I do when I don't know what I'm doing. I hear people all the time say, I want to be innovative, I want to just think outside the box, and I just want to create something totally new that's never been done before. Well, that's great, but my question is, why do you want to think outside the box before you even figure out what the box is? Figure out what the box is. What are the fundamentals? What has worked already? Don't be in such a hurry to be innovative before you figure out what the fundamentals are, because it's worked for some other people already. You want to figure that out. What has worked for them? Why did it work? You never want to be the first person that walks through a minefield. You don't want to do that. You want to get to the edge of that minefield and say, excuse me, would you mind helping me navigate through and tell me your process for getting through this minefield? What you're trying to do when you want to think outside the box and innovate first is what you're trying to do is just go racing through the minefield and say, I don't care what your process was, even though you're safely on the other side. I don't care that you're already at a destination where I want to be. I'm just going to go diving through the minefield and I'm going to figure it out myself. You can get hurt that way, okay? That is very dangerous in a minefield, and it's very dangerous in life. You want to figure out what the box is, what are the fundamentals first, and research. So there's two major pitfalls that I see when people are on their journey to greatness. And I realized this when I was just a young kid watching kung fu movies with my brother on Saturday mornings. My brother thought he was a real live ninja. For whatever reason, I have no idea. He had the ninja outfit and the ninja shoes and everything. He thought he was a ninja. But it was awesome because we got to watch kung fu movies together. It was kind of our bonding time. Well, after about 200 kung fu movies, you come to realize that there's a pattern to the storyline. They were all about the same. There were two major pitfalls that the star of the show ran into throughout his journey to achieve greatness. The first major pitfall that the star of the show ran into was the pitfall of ignorance. They always started off, they were pretty good, they had some talent, they had some skills, and they could usually beat up the regular guys, you know, the guys hanging around the grocery store in the market, right? And they could beat those guys up. But then inevitably, they'd come across the foe that had a little more skill and a little more talent and was a little more seasoned than them. And they would get a beat down. And they would lose that fight and they'd be all kind of broken down and beat up. And then in comes the grandmaster, the coach, the trainer, to pick them up and take them through a rigorous training regimen. And they would hone their skills and they would get good and they would get better. And then they would come back and they would face that foe that beat them down before. And they would inevitably beat that foe. And everybody was happy and they're feeling good about themselves, but you knew the movie wasn't over because it's only been 45 minutes and the movie couldn't have been over in 45 minutes. And now they're walking around and they're feeling good about themselves. Why? Because they've achieved a certain level of success. And now they're feeling good. And all eyes are on them and everybody's saying, hey, this is the person to beat and this person's awesome and this person helped save us. And then comes the second pitfall. They're headed right for it. And that's the pitfall of arrogance. To where they say, you know what? I know enough. I don't need to keep learning. The first pitfall was the pitfall of ignorance, where they didn't know enough. They didn't have enough skill. And then they developed their skill, and then the pitfall of arrogance. They stopped learning. Their grandmaster would try to teach them to be humble and, do different things. And they would say, no, I don't need to do that. I got it. They push them away and then they'd go out there fighting. And then they would run into the ultimate foe, right? This is the person that had been putting in years and years of skill development, years and years of training, years and years of craft mastery. And now this person who has been too arrogant to keep listening to their teacher, their coach, their trainer, and they go against that foe. And what happens? They take a massive public beatdown, right? And they lose. And this time it's worse because now everybody knows and it's public and everybody's seen it. And then what happens? Now that they've been crushed and they've gone through the second pitfall, the grandmaster comes back in, and once the student arrives, the teacher shows up and they pick them up and they teach them the other skills. They go back and they face the ultimate foe. They defeat the ultimate foe now because they've got over the pitfall of ignorance. They got over the pitfall of arrogance. They've developed and mastered their craft, and they have this huge win and victory. Everybody's happy and excited, and the movie's over, and me and my brother are running around doing kung fu moves for the rest of the day. It was fantastic. But all the movies were about the same, right? All of them were about the same storyline. Now think about that. Think about how that relates to our lives. You have a gift, skill, talent, and ability. You're pretty good, right? And you fall into the first pitfall of ignorance if you don't research, because you just don't know. You just don't know enough yet. You haven't done your research to figure out what's worked in the past, what's working right now, and what's potentially going to work in the future. You've done no research, you fall into the pitfall of ignorance. Let's say, okay, you're a seasoned person. You've gone through, several years of training, and you're feeling pretty good about yourself. You feel like, hey, I could teach the class on this thing. Well, you got to be careful not to fall into the pitfall of arrogance, because leaders are learners. You have to keep learning, because the world we live in now, what you know today could be obsolete in 2 to 3 to 4 years. It could be obsolete. It could be totally irrelevant now. So you have to keep learning. You don't want to fall into the pitfall of arrogance and feel like, no, I don't need to keep learning. There's nothing else anybody can teach me. I'm bigger, better, faster, and stronger than everybody else. That is a pitfall of arrogance. And guess what? Because you've achieved some level of success, that pitfall that you fall into could be a public humiliation for you. One way to avoid that would be to keep learning and keep doing your research and keep staying ahead of the curve. One thing they said about Frank Abagnale, who, if you remember him from the movie Catch Me If You Can, he was kind of a fraudster. He was doing fraudulent things, making checks and so forth. And he went and he was a professor at a university. He wasn't qualified. He didn't have the credentials. He went and kind of falsified the documents and got hired as a professor at a major credible university. And they asked him afterwards, they said, you pulled this off for quite some time. How could you possibly have pulled off and nobody realized that you were a fraud? How could that be? And he said, well, it was easy. All I had to do was stay one chapter ahead of my students. Now think about that. If you're a leader, pay attention. He just had to stay one chapter ahead of his students. And what? He could pull them along because he had done the research and stayed out ahead. You don't necessarily always want to lead from behind and push people. Some of the most powerful leaders in the world, in history, have been out in front of their people. They knew more, they researched more, they surveyed the land before, and they can pull the people along. That's what you want to do as a leadership nugget there. Pull your people along, stay 1 to 2 to 3 chapters ahead of them, and pull them along to their greatness. That's what you want to do for your people. All right, so one of the common mistakes that I see when it comes to research, see it all the time. You see it in little kids at the basketball court. You see it in sales. You see it all over the place. You see it in business. You see it in entrepreneurship. People want to do what's fancy before they do the fundamentals. Huge common mistake here. You see it on the basketball court where the kid's running, he's doing a hook shot, and he's doing the shooting from half court, and he's going raindrop, and he's shooting from half court, and you're going, hey, you can't even shoot a free throw yet. You don't even know how to pass the ball, thumbs out yet. And I wasn't a basketball player, but I did a little bit of research and I found out you got to be able to pass the ball. That's important before you can shoot a half-court shot. Well, you go to the YMCA, you see all that stuff all the time. You see kids and they're practicing what's fancy before they practice the fundamentals. Okay, it's easy to appreciate with kids, but what about us as business professionals and adults and entrepreneurs and salespeople and leaders? We're trying to do the innovative and fancy stuff before we master the fundamentals. And what did we say at the beginning? The fundamentals will get you there faster every time, unequivocally. Once you've mastered the fundamentals, then you can go on to the fancy. And once you do the fundamentals, you go into the fancy, then people will call you phenomenal. But it's got to be in that order, okay? It's got to be in that order. So next steps for you. You can research in these ways. You can pull up this application. It's amazing. You may have heard of it. It's called Google. You go to Google, you type in something related to your craft, and you research. This is what I would do. When I was researching and to be a stand-up comedian, I researched the top 5 stand-up comedians of all time. I had to figure out who that was. And I was surprised. Some people made that list that I hadn't even heard of and I wasn't familiar with before. And I studied them. Where were their beginnings? How did they get discovered and recognized? What was the process that they took that made them go from good to great? That went from irrelevant to amazing. What was their process? That was an awesome journey for me to figure out. And I learned a lot about the craft. Because let me tell you, I didn't realize that there were fundamentals to stand-up comedy the first time I went up to be a stand-up comedian. And none of my friends realized it either, because I asked them, I said, hey, what are the fundamentals of comedy? Anything I should know? And they said, no, man, just get up there and go for it. And I went up there and went for it. And let me tell you, I found out very quickly that there are fundamentals to stand-up comedy. If you don't deliver every 20 seconds, you're going to bomb. And I don't mean you're going to be the bomb. I mean, you're going to bomb, okay? You have to deliver every 20 seconds. I had never known that there was an anatomy to a joke. I never even heard the word premise before. I didn't know what any of that meant until I did my research. And it helped me be a better stand-up comedian. It helped me to be able to perfect my craft. So I studied the greatest of all times. I studied the people who were doing very well right now. Who are the top 5 comedians today? Who's knocking it out of the park, and what their process is, and what they're doing, and what kind of innovations are they using, and what kind of technology are they using, and learn from them. Doing my research so I don't fall into the pitfall of ignorance, okay? And then I'm researching who are the next up-and-comers. Who are slated to kind of take the reins next, and what are they doing, and why do people think that? And I'm learning from them so that I can avoid the pitfall of ignorance. And then once I kind of got my feet under myself and got booked and started doing well, I didn't fall into the pitfall of arrogance and think, oh, I know enough, I got it from here. No, I'm ever learning. You have to always be learning, okay? So go to Google. Then I want you to go to YouTube. If you're more of a visual learner and you want to see some things, YouTube has a plethora of information, and the majority of it is free. People are in your craft, whatever your craft may be. You can go to YouTube and somebody is willing to show you how to do it for free. All they want in return is for you to click like and maybe leave a comment or two. It's all there for you for free. Google and YouTube. Then you can search the hashtags, and this is how you do that. Let's say for Instagram, for instance. You click the search button, it's like a little magnifying glass on Instagram, and then you type in your hashtag. Let's say you want to be a leadership coach. Then you type in leadership in the search engine, and then you push the hashtag button. It's like people, places, and then the hashtag button. And you push the hashtag button, and anybody that has placed the hashtag for leadership, you'll see their post up there. And you can kind of see who's doing what in the realm of leadership. Well, you can do that with any word you can think of, right? Whether it's leadership, it's basketball, it's coaching, it's fitness training. You can search the hashtag and see who's viral right now, who's hot right now, who's knocking it out of the park right now, who are the next up-and-comers, and learn from them. This is how you do your research, okay? So what you want to do is you don't want to copy these people, okay? Don't copy. What you want to do is figure out how you can model. You just want to model some things. It's kind of like this. Look at their process and figure out what their backbone was, or the structure to what they do. Figure out their backbone, and then you put your beauty on top of that. You put your art on top of that. You put your structure, your personality, your style on top of that. But you can use their backbone all day and put your beauty on top of it. So that's what I want you to do in the realm of research. Those are your next steps. Take them, use them right away, and I'll see you in the next video.